How does internet jamming really work? And how can we counter it? Can you outmesh a city? When a government shuts down the internet or jams satellite signals, the same question always comes up. Why don't people just connect to each other? There are millions of phones in a city. There are only a few jammers. So why doesn't the signal spread anyway? On the surface, it feels like a numbers problem. In reality, it's a physics problem. And physics doesn't care how many people you have. The intuitive idea is simple. If one connection is blocked, use many smaller ones. Phones talk to phones. Routers relay data. Information hops its way across the city until it reaches someone who can get it out. This idea isn't fantasy. Mesh networking is real. It's used in disaster zones, remote areas, and temporary deployments. In small environments, it works well enough to send messages and coordinate people. So it feels reasonable to assume that if enough devices cooperate, they could overwhelm a jammer through sheer numbers. That assumption rests on one quiet belief: that jamming is a clever digital trick. It isn't. Jamming doesn't break into systems. It doesn't crack encryption or take over satellites. It doesn't need to understand the signal at all. It simply adds noise. By the time a satellite signal reaches the ground, it is incredibly weak. A jammer doesn't need to be smart. It only needs to be loud enough that the receiver can no longer tell signal from interference. Once noise rises above the signal, the data becomes unreliable. Drop enough packets, and the connection collapses. Modern communication systems don't try to win by being untouchable. They win by being frustrating to interfere with. Instead of staying on one clear radio channel, the signal keeps moving. By the time someone tries to block it, it has already shifted somewhere else. To keep up, a jammer can't just aim at one frequency anymore. It has to constantly search, react instantly, and chase the signal as it hops around. Miss the timing, and you're jamming empty space. At the same time, the message isn't sent as one strong, obvious transmission. It's spread thinly across a wide range of frequencies, so each part looks weak and unimportant on its own. To a jammer, it blends into background noise. To actually stop it, the jammer has to flood the entire range with interference. That means using far more power and equipment than before, instead of making a precise strike. When interference does increase, the system doesn't just drop the connection. It slows down, repeats itself, and uses simpler, tougher ways of sending data. It's like speaking more slowly and clearly in a loud room. The jammer can still make communication worse, but shutting it down completely now takes sustained effort, not a quick burst. On top of that, modern antennas don't shout in every direction. They focus their signal tightly toward the receiver. This means interference only works if it comes from the right place, at the right angle, and with enough strength. Random noise from the side or far away often doesn't matter much. Put together, these choices change the balance. Jamming no longer looks like flipping a switch and everything goes silent. It becomes a constant grind that demands more power, more coverage, better timing, and more persistence. It still works, but it stops being easy, cheap, or clean. But when the jammer is a state actor, cost is not the limiting factor. Power, proximity, and persistence are available. This is where the idea of just add more devices runs into reality. When people imagine phones forming a citywide network, they picture something abstract. In reality, radios live in space. Wi-Fi signals don't travel far, especially in cities. Walls absorb them. Buildings reflect them. Signals collide with each other. Line of sight disappears quickly. Each hop covers tens of meters, not kilometers. To cross a city, a message would need to jump through hundreds or thousands of devices, and every hop matters. Here's the part most people miss. Radios don't talk independently. They share the same air. Only one device can effectively transmit on a channel at a time. In a multi-hop network, every message has to be retransmitted over and over. Each retransmission consumes airtime. As the network grows, capacity doesn't scale up. It collapses, bandwidth shrinks, delays grow, reliability falls apart. Then stability becomes the next problem. Phones move, they lose battery, they overheat, they disconnect, they switch networks, they update. Large radio networks assume stable nodes that behave predictably. Human crowds do not. Routing breaks faster than it can be repaired. What looks like resilience on paper becomes congestion in practice. and urgency doesn't help. Humans spread information quickly during crises because they repeat, simplify, and broadcast. Radio networks don't work that way. They need timing, coordination, acknowledgments, and order. Chaos helps people. Chaos destroys packet networks. This is why rumors travel faster than files, why alerts spread faster than videos, why coordination beats connectivity. At city scale, consumer radios hit a wall, not because people aren't clever enough, but because physics sets the ceiling. This leads to an uncomfortable conclusion. You cannot overpower state-level jamming at the physical layer using consumer devices. Not with more phones, not with clever software, not by spreading the signal. But that does not mean people are powerless. When communication is restricted or jammed, the instinct is to fight for speed and capacity, to find a technical trick that restores real-time connectivity. Historically, that almost never works. States are simply better positioned to control spectrum, infrastructure, and power. The strategies that endure don't try to win that fight. They change the rules of it. Successful movements shift away from bandwidth and toward persistence. During the Cold War, banned texts in the Soviet Union weren't fast. They were copied by hand or typewriter, passed from person to person, sometimes taking months to spread. That slowness didn't weaken them. It protected them. By the time authorities reacted, the information had already moved on. The same pattern appears elsewhere. In 1970s Iran, cassette tapes carrying speeches circulated quietly through homes, markets, and mosques. They were low quality, easily duplicated, and impossible to fully trace. No broadcast tower was needed. What mattered wasn't reach in a single moment, but repetition over time. Each copy created another path. More recently, during internet shutdowns in places like Cuba, Myanmar, or parts of Africa, information often survived through delay rather than speed. Files moved by USB drives. Messages hopped through brief windows of connectivity. Social networks became physical as much as digital. These methods were inefficient, and that inefficiency was the point. There was no single choke point to shut down. The common thread is redundancy. Not one channel, but many. Not one copy, but repeated ones. Not one moment of transmission, but a long chain of retelling. From an information theory perspective, redundancy beats noise. From a political perspective, it exhausts control. This also reframes the role of technology. Tools matter, but not as weapons in an arms race. They matter as enablers of persistence, ways to store, copy, delay, and reintroduce information when conditions allow. When systems are fragile, strategies that assume fragility outperform those that demand perfection. Most importantly, this shifts our understanding of power. Physics sets strict limits on radios: range, power, bandwidth. Those limits are absolute. Human networks operate under different constraints. They are shaped by trust, memory, motivation, and patience. They can slow down without stopping. They can fragment without disappearing. They can survive by stretching communication across time instead of space. That's why attempts at total information control rarely succeed indefinitely. They can silence signals, they struggle to erase repetition, and they cannot easily stop people from carrying ideas forward once those ideas are shared. So the strategy, historically, is not to overpower interference. It is to outlast it. Not to be faster than control, but more persistent than it. Not to depend on a single connection, but to accept delay, duplication, and human participation as strengths rather than weaknesses. Information doesn't need to arrive instantly to matter. It needs to endure. And history shows that when communication adapts in this way, it usually does. There's an irony in all of this. The same slow, decentralized communication that once helped challenge power is now what power tries to suppress. That pattern repeats across history. Those outside authority depend on persistence and repetition, while those inside it try to control the flow. The tools don't change. Only who fears them does.